Hello out there. My name's David Horton, and I'm proud to be one of the pastors at St. Luke's Methodist here in Houston. Thanks for joining me today. Friends, I want to talk about anxiety today. Let's talk anxiety. I preached on anxiety yesterday, if you're watching this on Monday, and I know not all of you are watching the sermon on Sunday, and that's totally okay, or you watched a different sermon. That's awesome. Great. But still, I wanted to offer you the highlights of what I preached yesterday, primarily because these things are just so helpful to me right now. And second, because we got to talk about anxiety these days. Just got to. It's on the rise. It's September of 2020 after all. We're counting, I've lost count how many pandemics all at once. These are anxious times, and even if you don't feel it in your heart, I guarantee you know somebody who does. How do we manage our anxiety in these times? Well, the first thing I want you to know is that anxiety is normal. It's normal. It's just not always helpful. Anxiety is the body's response to any kind of threat, okay? But what makes anxiety different is that we internalize it. The threat out there has become worry in here. We can't shake the worry no matter how hard we try. Think of a gear shift. It's like the thread is stuck in the on position, and you can never shift down. It's stuck in the on position. Anxiety is persistent. You have these thoughts, these worries that just stay there. And again, you just can't shake them. At its heart, anxiety is rooted in fear. And my favorite acronym for my favorite way of explaining what fear is as an acronym: false emergencies appearing real. That's anxiety. Many times when we talk about fear, being afraid, it's actually anxiety. When you're anxious, very normal, everyday things all of a sudden feel like emergencies. Okay? And so you feel restless and edgy all the time, like you have to be ready at a moment's notice. In preparing for yesterday's sermon, I talked to one of our counselors at Nick Finnegan Counseling Center. They're connected to our church, offering great family and individual counseling on a sliding scale basis. Go to finnegancounseling.org. Finnegan has 2 N's if you're interested in counseling in this time. The counselor I was talking to talked about how we humans evolved in a condition where there were saber-toothed tigers around, and you always had to be on the lookout for the saber-toothed tiger. Well, anxiety is when there really isn't really a saber-toothed tiger around, but it feels that way. It feels that way, and you can't shake that, and so you're on the edge constantly, always more afraid and more edgy than you were. Now, anxiety is not the same thing as being cautious, right? So when you wear a face mask out in public, that's just being cautious. That's being cautious in the pandemic. That's not anxiety. That's not fear, and it's not the same thing as being prepared. I know many of you were preparing for a hurricane a few weeks ago, which thank God didn't hit us. God bless our neighbors in Louisiana, right? It's not anxiety when you're boarding up your windows or you're stocking up on milk and eggs, right? That's just being prepared, as long as you don't let the panic overwhelm you. Anxiety. I want you to know 4 things that can help you manage your own anxiety in this time, as normal as it is. First, know your threats. Know your threats. Know what triggers you. Know your saber-toothed tigers that aren't really real, but they feel real, and they trigger these intrusive worries that you just can't push out of your mind. If we were living in Jesus' time, we'd call those intrusive thoughts demons, right? You just can't shake them. It's like they have a life of their own. And Jesus wants to cast out our demons, right? When you read the Gospels, you see Jesus casting out demons. You don't see him making enemies with people out there. You see him confronting the demons with people in here. That's a good word for our time. Let's not waste our time confronting enemies out there or making enemies out there. Let's confront our own demons in here. Know your threats. The second thing is control your response. How are you responding to your anxiety? How are you coping with your anxiety. In the New Testament, the main coping mechanism we see for anxiety is community, turning to community. Paul says in Galatians chapter 6, verse 2, bear one another's burdens. Bear one another's burdens. You're not responsible for someone else's burdens, but if you're in community with somebody, you do have a responsibility to them to help them manage their anxiety, and so they can help you manage yours. Community can be the best coping mechanism, okay? Then the third thing, surrender control to God. Surrender control. Control is an illusion. You really never had it in the first place. It's like grasping after smoke. There's this amazing quote from the writer Elizabeth Gilbert. She said, "You're afraid of surrender because you don't want to lose control. But you never had control. All you had was anxiety." Control is really an illusion. So surrender it. Surrender it and lift it up to God. And here's the final thing today, friends. Turn to trust. Turn to trust. Replace your need for control with trust. I said yesterday that peace moves at the speed of surrender, and surrender moves at the speed of trust. When you put your whole trust in God, knowing that God is loving and faithful and good, and God will always provide for you no matter what, you feel this peace. Paul talks about the peace that surpasses all understanding. But that moves at the speed of surrendering your control to God, and that moves at the speed of trust. Put your whole trust in God. Exchange your need for control in this time, well, with trust. That's what I'm going to be working on this week, and I hope you will too.